Hi, this is Chris with Wiley Development and Tasty Equity. Welcome to the highlight reels from our monthly webinar series. A lot of folks have been asking us about our retrofit of a self-pour alcohol system into one of our existing rapid-fire pizza restaurants. As a matter of fact, we've answered that question so many times we've decided to include a special session on it. Hope you enjoy what we learned about putting a self-pour system in your store.
Okay, so although self-serve really is applied to a number of different markets, we're really concentrating on this fast casual dining application. The key thing here is just like Chris brought up earlier is, listen, you're waiting in line to order your pizza. We find that in fast casual applications, people don't want to wait in line for another beer. So the key thing here is there's no waiting. You can have as many tasters and as many products as you want without having to get back into line. So it really gives the patron there's no hurdles that they have to jump over to essentially enjoy more product.
For Pete and I, it was an eye-opening experience to go through the first self-pour experience. And what we realized is that fortunately we had an operating restaurant, so it wasn't a new build. Now we are in the middle of doing new builds, and we think about it a lot differently, right? But people need to understand that it's a significant project, and the guys that I pour it have a lot of experience at it, right? And you guys work with a lot of contractors, or the local CIs, as you call them, who work in certain markets. But this is not a little hobby project. This is not adding an ice cream bar. This is a deliberate business decision, just like turning on your third-party delivery services, which we all thought was going to be easy, and it turned out to be quite a deal. So, Darren, could you talk just a little bit about how you guys support people going through what we call the timeline to pour, the time to pour process?
So I think this is perfect. We have a consultative sales process, and we have a lot of operators who ask us questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? What do I do here? We use the data to present to them and say, hey, we don't know all the answers to your specific questions, but I can give you the data and what we've learned, and you make the decision on what's right for your business. So going through this, through this process, this consultative process, we use the data to come up with pro formas. And we have found that, our locations on average in fast casual, they're serving anywhere between 18 and upwards of 40% of their alcohol to food. We have some locations that are doing 100% revenues through the iPour It system. But part of the success is, how do you architect this? We help with ideas for laying out the location. As far as the permitting and all that piece, we obviously leave that to the operator and the architect who does that. We have relationships with certified beer installers throughout the country that we go to. The key thing is really, how do you set up the self-serve system to serve your patrons and your operation the best? And obviously we guide our operators to that as well. So in the flow,
there's a lot of considerations in there that we discovered as we put it in. On the top right, you can see one of our new cantina formats. What you don't realize is that's coming right off of the service line, right off of the queue area. So as you walk to that first tap on the right-hand side, you got tacos in your hand, right? One of the things that we worked on in that store is our third implementation, I believe, is we really thought through, how's that customer going to flow. The one on the bottom left was our first install. We did essentially a standalone cabinet. That was an example of, what you guys referred to as a long draw. The walk-in cooler is 80 feet away in the back room. The cabinet is there displaying everything, and in a similar fashion, it's located so as you come off of the queue line, you come past the Pepsi machine, you can just see you're walking right across in front of the beer, right? But, there's little things we didn't anticipate, like if everybody comes in during a rush, and I keep looking at the monitors, I apologize. If everybody comes in during a rush and gets bracelets and starts pouring beer, guess what? They all get up and leave at the same time. If they get up and leave at the same time and you're still in the middle of the rush, they're going to all walk back to the point of sale and try to turn in their bracelets and cash out, right? This was a holy cow moment in the middle of our, $5,000 lift in sales that first 3 weeks, right? Or, per week. So, these are little things that we're now going, oh, we got to compensate for that. So, it's not quite the wild, wild west. It's a little more civilized, but you've got to ask a lot of questions. You got to talk to other operators, and you've got to really figure it out. For us, we've started to standardize how and why we do it. But I'm really showing these 3 examples on the screen because it varies wildly, right? Some of your locations that I've been in, Darren, some of your operators have 50 taps on one wall. It's like a giant wall, right? Personally, I like the essentially the walk-in cooler in the middle of the venue, breaking the room up. Great idea, which is a concept we're embracing in our new tap room and large format cantina formats. But I think you would say the variety of installations varies as much as your clients vary, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We retrofit an existing store. So this is one of our rapid fire pizza locations. For those of you in fast food, quick service, this is a 3,000-foot store. It's a queue line style. If you're familiar with Blaze or Mod, Biology, we are a competitor in that space. So essentially what we did is we added a cabinet. You can see in the middle of the screen there. It was almost like a standalone cabinet. So as you come off the queue line, you come past the Pepsi machine, you can literally pour your own. The whole system runs off of a bracelet. There are kind of room key, like hotel room key style devices to operate it with. But here's what we really found. People changed their behavior when the alcohol got on the tables with them. It literally changed our fast casual environment to more of a friendly, cozy date night environment. Now, I'm not saying it was a romantic environment, although we'd like to make the lighting a little darker, right, Pete? I'm looking at the monitors there. But it created a different environment where people leaning in together, sitting in groups and talking and staying a little longer and not so much taking their food out. The key to this is Pete and I are craft beer nuts, and Pete's actually a brewer. We took the strategy of, you can see the 18 tap system on the screen, and you can see the chalkboard closer there at the bottom right. We took the strategy of rotating craft beers and ciders. We did not deploy wine in this particular case, but keeping them in kind of 3 or 4 or 5 flavor profiles, sweet and bitter and hoppy and dark, and then, of course, at Christmas, the seasonals. And we learned a few things about rotating beers. A beer that would come in, that we bring in that was totally unique, or a hot cider, if we brought it back 2 weeks later, nobody was excited about it. So when we use the term rotator or rotating taps, you're going to hear Darren talk about it. Rotating the taps continually is critical. In our 18 tap system, we change probably a half dozen kegs a week. So we started out with this after lots of years of research. My brother Pete, who's on the line with us, Pete, you did a bunch of research on Cell4. What inspired that originally?
Number one, I like beer. I like craft beer. So I stumbled across iPort and a couple other systems and started looking into it. Figured out, how can we put this in a fast casual restaurant? I love the idea of sampling. Personally, I get a flight of beer. If you're not into beer, a flight is usually 4 to 6 2 to 4 ounce pours of beer. So that's how I always order when I go into a restaurant. So iPort provided that example or that option to put into a live restaurant without having to wait on a waiter or something like that. One of the biggest challenges we saw in going to the alcohol industry was literally waiting on the bartender or waiting to be served. So this really fit our model. And after evaluating a couple different systems, we ended up going with iPort. Been very happy with it so far.
Yeah, and I think, Darren, I won't have you jump in right now, but I know Brett, one of the founders of iPort, created the technology because he's a software geek, and he was frustrated because he couldn't get a beer in a Yard House bar restaurant, right? People were driving in. Our store is located about 30 miles, actually about 18 miles from downtown Toledo. We're a big, small town where Bowling Green University is, or this particular location. What I'm showing on the left-hand side is when we do demographic studies for our stores, we focus on a 2 to 5 mile service range. There is nothing outside that 5 mile ring until you get to the next cities, except farmland. Well, what you can see on the right-hand side is a heat map that's produced by Darren's team. They literally heat map the addresses, or quite literally the zip codes, right, Darren?
That's correct.
Yeah, they're heat mapping the zip codes of where the patrons are coming from. Now, how do we get that? We scanned their bracelet, or we scanned their driver's license in order to issue the bracelet, which activates the taps. In all our years, Pete, of having data and buying data, it's never really been available to us, has it, through point of sale or merchant services to truly understand where the customer's coming from?
Yeah, this is by far the most granular, because the other ones, even a reward system, relied on basically an email, potentially a phone number, but you didn't necessarily know where they came from unless they chose to enter the address. So.
Yep. So this was stunning. Again, we do have a good idea when we design our stores, the way we do our marketing, the way we mail, but the fact that we were pulling people in from 15, 18, even 30 miles away down in Findlay was stunning. What that did, though, and again, we're talking results here, right? It changed the experience in the store. It changed the draw distance. But look at the demographics on the right-hand side. The fact that people are suddenly coming from 15 miles away, well, beyond farmland, there's some small towns in that circle. And literally, if you notice on the top, even at the green service areas, I call it, the 5 miles, 32,000 employees, largely supporting the university and all these sundry businesses, and the 36,000 residents, excluding the students, by the way. That number more than doubled when we started to attract customers in from 15 miles away. I can tell you that that impact is something that we're planning for as we move into other stores, because it affects our marketing, it affects how close we put our stores together and things like that. Again, check us out on the Wiley Development Group Facebook and or Wiley Development Group YouTube channel. You can watch recordings of these events.